Messi's Miami loses in Vancouver. Just what is summer soccer providing to the American soccer landscape, and what will be the best version of promotion and relegation in the USA? That and more on Friday's Morning Kick Around. Hello and welcome to the show. This is Morning Kick Around, where we cover the world's favorite game from the world's favorite country, coming to you live each Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I'm Robert Kerr. He's Jason Davis. Thank you for joining us this morning. I went undrafted last night. How about you?
Yeah, it was not picked up in the NFL draft, surprisingly. Rob, are you dressed to sell me a lawnmower? What's up with this? You look very professional compared to soccer jersey man over here.
Well, I have to do like 10 hours of work immediately after the show, so I've just started to I don't even have time to run upstairs to get out of a soccer thing. And most of my soccer related paraphernalia is either white or green, which doesn't work back here. So
right,
I just go with
it's more it's the collar. It's just you're wearing a collar, and I'm just so that seems like you've elevated the style of this show on. Well, now I'm uncomfortable. There's too much.
That 70s pool party now, isn't it? All right.
Yeah. Now you want to sell me a jacuzzi instead of a lawnmower, and I'm not sure I want to buy one from you right now.
The ladies love the hot tubs, Jason. It's the new thing.
Or a waterbed. You want to go 70s? Sell me a waterbed.
Yeah, the Minecraft movie had a waterbed joke, and I heard multiple kids in the theater go, "A waterbed."
What a wild time in America waterbeds were. Raise your hand in the chat if you remember waterbeds, because I don't know that a lot of people do. But I knew someone who had one, and we would go and just like do this on the I was young enough that it was nothing untoward was happening. just like floating on the waterbed.
Yeah, I remember trying to watch TV or something in my buddy's room, and you're
the tide's coming in while you're watching Magnum PI.
And it's like a thing that you want to be as comfortable as you want to be, but there's potential danger of your entire house flooding with one wrong move.
That's true. Yeah.
You're supposed to be comfortable in that thing.
Yeah.
Oh, well, with all that waterbed talk in the rearview mirror, it's time to get into the world's game. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, Morning Kick Around, already, do so now. With every subscription, more things open up to us to the YouTube God. So more subscriptions, please. We also have memberships available. There's many perks to that, including priority commenting on the videos, early access to videos, and some bonus content created by Mr. Davis and myself. So be sure, if you are able and want this show to grow, subscribe and then get a membership. Follow along on social media at MKickaround on the X, Instagram, and Blue Sky. You can also write us an email, morningkickaround@gmail.com. And one more way to support us, coffee.com/morningkickaround. And lest I forget, if you're driving or just need us in your pocket on the go, search for Morning Kick Around on your favorite audio platform and just take us as a podcast. All right. All the admin out of the way. Looks like people are getting into this live show. Let's hit off Friday's Morning Kick Around with some long balls. Long balls here for Friday on Morning Kick Around. I'm Robert, Pop Collar Cool. He's Jason Davis, leading off here on Friday. Messi's Miami got dominated in British Columbia, 2-0 the score in favor of the Whitecaps. Is the Vancouver Whitecaps MLS's and North America's version of Nottingham Forest? Not a lot of the ball, but they definitely dominated on the score sheet.
Well, I think they probably would have preferred to have more of the ball, but obviously Miami's got some pretty talented players and can control things from that perspective. So they had 30% possession last night, did Vancouver, but who cares? Who cares how much of the ball you have if they don't score and you put the ball in the net twice? And those are two good goals. from Vancouver, particularly that first one.
Oh,
Lovely.
that was beauty. How often does that chip ball into the box isn't like a a high percentage play, but they nailed it. I
Well,
definitely went out. Oh my, when I saw that.
Brian White gets separation from his marker, and you put the ball there, and you leave a goalkeeper with a difficult choice. He's going to try to fire off the line to get there, probably not. And that's a man who can finish in Brian White. And I don't we are very easily swept up by a wave of good play by guys, especially Americans. Like an American hits a nice run of form, it's like, oh, he's the guy. He needs to be. Oh, what Mauricio Pochettino, start him up top in the World Cup. Like, I don't know if that's Brian White, but I will tell you that it's really hard to deny that he's a very good goal scorer. And if you think about this, there's not another American striker anywhere close to him in terms of form. Now, some of that's due to injury, right? Ricardo Pepi is out injured, but even a Josh Sargent, even a Haji Wright, you can't even put Balogun in this conversation. I'm sure, Ajamang has not done a lot. Brian White is doing what Ajamang isn't doing, scoring goals in Major League Soccer, and he's doing it against the league's best teams and against Mexican teams as well. So Brian White is a great story. Vancouver's a great story. Sebastian Berhalter.
Yeah, I was
Can we
gonna
get
say son of Berhalter. Wow, what a level up he's done.
Here's Andrew Johnson. Berhalter in, but not Triple G, not Greg. We're talking about Sebastian Berhalter. That is that's a I don't know if that's a development a lot of people saw coming, Rob, that we might be having an argument about whether there should be a Berhalter in the national team, but not the former coach.
So the Berhalter, the player, son of Triple G, he was kind of a side note in the conspiracy theory with the Berhalter versus Reina family drama about like who got playing time or this and that. But I feel like that has been shed with this recent run of form from Berhalter. That was a really well taken goal, and I was impressed. And just to kind of put a little bit of a context onto how much of the ball Miami had in this, but really didn't threaten at all. I don't really remember any Miami chances, but according to FotMob, passing 604 compared to 242 for Vancouver. Big chances created, a big 0 for Inter Miami. I've said this to off the air. I think I'm not sure if this made the show, but Miami is one of the best teams, obviously, in this league and this competition, but I feel like they're right on the edge of it unraveling all the time. Like certain individual moments could lead to the kind of the wheels falling off. I think that Miami, of the pick your fight, are really good teams in MLS. They're the most likely or possible to have that steep drop.
Well, that's the risk you take when so many of your key players are on the verge of needing AARP cards or walkers to get around. I mean that's an easy joke, but it is worth pointing out that Luis Suarez, has he scored in?
I think they said 7 or 8 games last night.
Now, look, some strikers can go 7 or 8 games, and you're not like, get him out of the lineup. But when you have a guy who has that many miles on his legs and is prone to biting even his own teammates, because that's the thing that happened fairly recently.
I saw someone, a girl, I don't know if it was at the game last night, but I saw it posted, a girl wearing a t-shirt that had like a bloody patch in the corner and it said Suarez was here on her shirt. I thought that was kind of funny.
Well, that's we're doing Halloween costumes out now. That's great. That is the thing, right? Like, we all trust that until Lionel Messi stops being good, he's just going to be good. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can't. Last year I was doing the radio show and we were getting ready for the season, and I don't blame him, but Eric Winalda said, "Oh, Messi's not going to make the season. He's not going to finish the season." And there have been injury things, right? There have been injury things, but he's not going to, he's not going to play this many games or whatever. It's gonna end. Somehow this is going to go badly. When Luis Suarez arrived, he was limping, and we were declaring him over, and then he went and scored all those goals last year, and it's like, well, you can't count out Luis Suarez. But sure, at some point, I don't know that that's what happened last night, though. I think you have a very solid team in Vancouver who is obviously on a good run of form. Brian White can score goals. They're opportunistic with the Berhalter second one, which is obviously key going back to Miami and Fort Lauderdale for that second leg. You're right, though. No big chances for Miami. Messi was sort of relegated to taking long shots from outside the box, which none of them really threatened the Vancouver keeper. So, there's work to be done, but this could very easily turn around in the second leg. I do not think that Miami's out of it.
Yeah, that second goal is key, but we shall see how that plays out. We all saw Messi's ankle at the Copa America last year, so
Good point.
it was that's
But
understandable. And then Suarez's performance last year under the radar, they got the points record. Suarez a big part of that. And then even though Suarez hasn't scored very prolifically yet, he is Miami's assist leader, so he is contributing. And I feel a little bit bad because, it's just the nature of having a public facing job. As a couple weeks ago, I saw a side by side of showing like prime Suarez and him and his running, and then side by side with like old Suarez, which is cruel in a way. But you do see the running gait is completely different.
Completely different. Yeah. I mean,
how many shots does he need in his legs to like get it going for a full game?
He talked about doing his own injections while he was playing in Brazil. He talked about doing his own injections in his knee. I hope that's not the case. I think Jorge Mas has some money to throw at fixing Luis Suarez's knees on a weekly basis. And look, the guy's committed. Like, if we want to compare this to like a major league situation, the film Major League, there is the pitcher whose name is, I can't believe I don't know his name in the movie because I know every character from that movie, but he's the one that's like gunking up the ball all the time. And like, he's got, Vagisil for some reason. Yeah. The old guy is just making it work because he just wants to last as long as he possibly can. And he's going to use every trick in the book. And that's Luis Suarez. Luis Suarez will play soccer until he literally falls down and cannot play anymore.
Yeah. Hopefully he has, isn't like wheelchair ridden or anything by the time he retires.
He might be. By the way, FODMOB lists him at 5'12". I think that's impossible.
What, his height?
Yeah, his height is listed at 5'12". All right, continue, Rob.
That's pretty funny. I'm glad we got our second major league reference of the week, and thank you for that. That always makes me happy. And that pitcher was so old. Was anyone believing that guy was a major league age range in there? That guy was about 60 in that movie.
I'm going to reference Charlie Huff. Go look up Charlie Huff and tell me he wasn't like an analog for Charlie Huff. That's an old baseball reference some people will get. All right, go ahead, Rob.
Long ball number 2 here for Friday, hot off the press. More soccer wars. The soccer wars are increasing. There was signs of it with the addition of a WPSL team coming in and the USL second first division, but NWSL, the first division of women's soccer in the United States, submitted an application to the federation to start a Division II league in 2026. So the soccer wars definitely has spread to the women's side of the game. There are now 3 competing different entities in the professional soccer world.
Has it though? Oh yeah. There are 3 Okay, so actually line that up for us, Rob, for people who are maybe catching up. What 3 entities are operating or intend to operate professional women's soccer leagues in America?
So as it is now, NWSL Division 1, the USL Super League is a competing Division I league, and then
competing is a question, but
parallel.
Yes, let's call them parallel because they're playing on an alternate season, and they're not in there. There are shared markets. I know there are, but okay, continue.
A de facto second division, but technically first division. And then we talked about the WPSL, which is a longstanding amateur league, adding a professional tier to their setup. So. And I think that was at the second or third division level. So there is now going to be competing professional women's league at both the first and the second division level, I believe.
Well, so this is what I want to pick apart, right? So you've got the NWSL, which is clearly a top division. They're growing and building, and there's some well-run clubs and there's some lesser well-run clubs, but there's money involved, and we're seeing expansion get a lot of attention, like in Denver and all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have the Super League, which is they're just a disruptor, right? The idea, and they're not. I don't know that the Super League is thinking, you know what we're going to do? Take on the NWSL. This is obviously USL as an organization, right? And this explains a lot of what's happening on the men's side too. Just thinking like, well, why don't we have a first division women's league? We don't, there's nothing that says we can't, right? U.S. soccer has these rules about first division, second division, third division, but they don't have any rules about there can't be multiple of those. And so the USL Super League, which chose to operate on a fall to spring calendar, the only league in America doing that, I will point out, they've got Brooklyn, Carolina, in Ascent in Charlotte, Dallas Trinity, DC Power. That is a shared market with an NWSL team. I guess you could argue about Carolina Ascent's in Charlotte, and you have an NWSL team in Raleigh. Is that correct? Is North Carolina FC based out of the Courage? They're based out of Raleigh, I believe.
I believe so.
Then you've got Fort Lauderdale United, Lexington, Spokane, which is not an NWSL city, but they do have a team in the state, obviously. Tampa Bay Sun. Okay, so you're not really. There's an Orlando team in the NWSL that's not too far away from Tampa, but you're not really crossing over too much where this idea is like we're going up against them directly. And then we have the second division thing. All right, so WPSL, which that's fairly new information too, right? The WPSL Pro League, and their idea is we are going to be a development league at the second division in American soccer, right? So, and I'm looking at the list of their teams set to launch in their first season next year. Houston, Austin, Cleveland, Dakota Fusion out of Moorhead, Minnesota. I don't know the geography there, but that's a little confusing to me. Georgia Impact out of Atlanta. Denver, Indios Denver. Okay, again, but playing in an athletic complex, 2,000 seats. I mean, are they going to be competing with the NWSL team in Denver? I don't think competing is the right word. And what NWSL here is clearly doing here is modeling MLS Next Pro, right? They're basically like, or the G League or whatever other development league some big league has in their sport. Minor League Baseball. You want to do it? You want to take it to minor league baseball? You certainly can. And I saw our friend Dan at The Protagonist say, reject minor league soccer, WPSL or whoever. And that's okay. Like I understand his point, but I don't know that I don't know that I blame NWSL for wanting to have a development organization that they control. But of course, this messes up this idea of a unified pyramid. This makes it very difficult to imagine everybody getting together and working together. And I don't know that it's going to confuse too many people, especially since it's so new. But it can't be great in the big scheme of things to have 2 first division leagues and 2 second division leagues. It just can't be great, Rob. It just feels wrong, right?
Yeah, it is confusing. I mean, we are more tapped into this than many folks, and it's a little bit confusing in my mind, at the very least. The more teams just pop up and fold over and over, the less likely I am to emotionally invest any of it. Feels like it's all going to fizzle out. I hate soccer wars. I do agree with the confusion and all that, but in the same way, these soccer wars, this new generation that we're working through here I feel like it's all adding density to the landscape. More and more teams are coming around, and hopefully they don't all fizzle out. But I don't know if it's necessarily a bad thing. I can see where the pessimism comes in, where you don't want them to fizzle out. But I feel like people are putting more realistic, possibly more realistic goals on these smaller town teams.
Yeah, look, does it seem like NWSL, and I'm looking at the story over at CBSSports.com, which is where it was broken by Party Catchery. And this is new this morning. Like this broke right before we came on today. So this is filing an application. They filed an application with US Soccer to launch a Division II league with the intention of furthering player development, right? The application was filed April 1st with a 6-page letter signed by Jessica Berman, submitted to U.S. Soccer. Berman likens the proposed Division II league to the minor league baseball system, writing that it is, quote, imperative that NWSL create a robust pipeline for world-class athletes to fuel the explosive growth. Now, if you want to be critical of this, it is sort of the idea of like, we're going to put these players under our umbrella, and instead of them going off and playing for an independent team in the USL Super League, or I guess in WPSL, which is also going to be a developmental league, but would be independent of the NWSL system, we are going to keep them in-house, right? Again, this is MLS. This is just like MLS. What do you like about it? You don't like the minor league baseball?
I don't want
analogy?
soccer to turn into a minor league system. That's why I am anti MLS Next Pro. And now that you said that, I don't like that either, because baseball, I feel like, has been hollowed out because, 100 years ago or so, every town in America had it. It was America's pastime. They rooted for their hometown team, and then slowly independents got fewer and fewer. And then now Major League Baseball essentially owns the sport outside of a handful of like independent leagues that pop up here and there. They own the game entirely, and I don't want
Yeah.
the small town teams to just be feeders, because then that'll decrease the interest in those teams. Because what we're trying to do here, or what I want it to turn out, is small town fan bases are rooting for their team to succeed and improve
Right.
and grow,
Right.
not just be like, oh, our new forward scored 5 goals in 6 games. She's gone.
You want something that's more akin to college sports than to minor league baseball.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
I don't want to be rooting for someone to do well and then leave, or pretend our games are just training situations rather than actual competitive matches.
Right. No, I completely understand it. Now, I grew up on minor league baseball, but I loved it. But I was a kid and I didn't know any better. And what you're suggesting is that adult fans would have less interest because we're just preparing players to move up. This isn't really ours. Now, I don't know here. So the other thing about this is very much like MLS Next Pro. This is probably going to be teams that are attached to their parent clubs and in the same market. The Division II teams that are slated to play in the first year: Bay FC, Kansas City Current, North Carolina Courage, Gotham FC, Orlando Pride, Racing Louisville, Seattle Reign, and Washington Spirit will play in the same stadiums as their corresponding Division I teams. So you know, this is not, again, this is directly sort of almost like a reserve league is what this is. You kind of have to think about it that way. Now, does that make it any less problematic for you because they're going for Division II status instead of calling it a reserve league?
So with that in mind, the fact that like they're being upfront and it is a backup league, I guess it gives more peripheral players that are in the pro setup more playing time. And NWSL has been signing younger and younger players. There's a young player from Michigan called Chloe Ricketts. She, for a couple of weeks, was the youngest ever player signed to a contract, but she's largely ridden the bench. Maybe so. Yeah. This is at Washington Spirit. So if Washington Spirit's one of those teams, maybe she gets more playing time as a teenager for the second team.
Right. I mean, obviously, this is going to lead to a situation where players have to make a tough choice. And it's happening now on the men's side, right? And then again, it used to be like, oh, you just go to college and then you get drafted or you go pro after that and you try to catch on somewhere. Now it's, do I sign with the MLS team that drafts me? Or if I'm a free agent, there's no draft. Do I sign with an MLS team and play for the MLS Next Pro team on the idea that I might move up a level, or I get seen in that league, right? The idea is maybe that you get seen by somebody else and you catch on somebody else somewhere else, or do you go play for an independent club in the USL, in the Championship or League One, and maybe you get seen there, maybe not. Maybe the money will probably be better. I mean, I guess it depends on what market you're talking about, but that's going to be the choice, right? That's going to be the thing that these players now have to ask themselves. Would I rather go play for the Division II outfit attached to an NWSL team, or would I rather play in the USL Super League or some other independent league?
We shall see. Long ball number 3 here today, the Fab for American soccer games across the American soccer landscape. This is the segment where we pick out the games. I mean, there's a whole lot of games going on across all the different levels here in the United States. So we'll pick the top 4 that we think that look like they could be the most interesting and well worth your time this weekend. We'll start at the top of the pyramid, Major League Soccer. A couple tasty ones. What is your number 1 fabulous pick for a game to watch in Major League Soccer?
I mean, I'm having to pick one game out of 15 in this league, so it gets a little tough. But if you scan the fixture list or I hate to be, I'm channeling British stuff. I don't mean to do that. If I look at the schedule for Major League Soccer,
the fixture list. Were you about to say fixture list?
I'm gonna read the fixture list and go down and have a point at the pub. All right. I'm looking at the list. The schedule, there aren't a lot of games that jump out, although I do think there are a couple that are more intriguing. One of them is Minnesota Vancouver, but I'm not taking that one. That is a good one. That's, I think, first and third in the Western Conference. Yeah. Obviously, Vancouver off the win over Inter Miami last night, so that one's interesting. I think that's a Sunday match because Vancouver has to travel to Minnesota after their Thursday match in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. But I'm going to take, and I like storylines, I like narratives, I like drama, I like all that stuff. I'm taking Columbus, San Jose.
Oh yeah, that's saucy.
Now, obviously, Columbus is a very good soccer team. They play very good soccer. I like watching them play. You might not have to sell me on this game with anything else besides watching Columbus is fun. But you also got San Jose coming to town. They're fresh off of getting rocked by Sporting Kansas City. I mean, guys, you gave up 5 goals to Sporting Kansas City. That's pretty poor. And obviously, Bruce Arena has been doing a whirlwind media tour this week in which he has taken some shots at the head coach of the U.S. men's national team. Now, he may not have gone direct head on with those shots. He may have kind of devised them as glancing blows, but they've gotten written up, right? It went from, and we covered it, right? It went from Bruce Arena says some things on the Landon Donovan, Tim Howard podcast to being written up by Paulo Maurer at The Athletic as Bruce Arena says the job should have gone to an American. And that's a pretty aggressive way to frame it. And so as Bruce arrives in Columbus, I don't know if any of that's going to be affecting the match, but I'm sort of interested to see like what the reaction to Bruce might be, kind of like where things go with this. And is San Jose good? Are they good? Not sure. I don't know if they're good. They just added No Buck at the deadline. So maybe No Buck plays for Bruce Arena.
Yeah, well, No Buck. You feel like he's a player that's in that savvy pickup sort of category. Very good at the Major League Soccer level. And one of those players you really need to fill out your roster. I feel like there's a couple teams that could use a No Buck right now. But San Jose 3-1-5, a little bit mid, but yeah, Bruce Arena getting really saucy. And I thought it was interesting. I think it was one of the main takeaways was U.S. soccer being heavily influenced by media and social media specifically. And I was going to say, if there was maybe more robust reporting and more people like on staff examining U.S. soccer and the federation, would the team be in a different place now? Like Grant Wall, like he had his finger on the pulse. Obviously, we don't have him anymore, but would if the federation is that affected by folks writing words and talking on microphones,
maybe
different with Grant Wall around.
I actually think that the window has moved away from the idea that we could have established. Look, I was there on the scene 20 years ago or 15 years ago getting started. And I was, obviously I wasn't the first to the party, but, fairly early to this thing about how do we build an American soccer media sphere kind of thing. Not that we were thinking about it in those terms. We were just trying to, make money enough to feed our families covering a sport we love and trying to do the best we could. But what I think the window has moved past the idea that we could sort of build that. If you didn't already have an established media ecosphere that was covering the team, like the way, look, it's not healthy all the time, but think about the way the Mexican national team is covered and talked about in media in Mexico. Like it's constantly top of the, top topic. It's constantly front page news, whatever's going on with the national team, the head coach selection, the player selection, how they perform, all that stuff. Right. That kind of situation is not something we can create now. The world has changed too much. That's an established thing that Mexico brought into the modern era of digital media. We cannot now go and create that sort of environment around our national team because digital media has fractured our attention so much. And honestly, one of the ways to stand out is to yell and scream and rant and say controversial things and all of that. And we're rewarding that, I think, too much, but I don't want to be an old man shaking my fist at the cloud. I just, sometimes you have to roll with the punches. And I think I was reading an article after this Bruce Arena thing by a guy named Tom Hindle, and I don't know who Tom is. I looked up that he is apparently a Brit based in the United States, but he wrote a piece after Bruce Arena's comments at goal.com that starts with the words, the outrage economy. And then he identifies how Donovan and Howard and Lawless and all these guys, and most of them former players. And I work with one on the radio, and I've talked to Alexi 1,000 times in my career, and I've interacted with these guys. And it becomes this thing as the old guys, in order to matter and continue to be relevant, do stuff like this, right? Call out the younger generation for not being as committed as they were, right? And I don't know that we can. I don't know that we can imagine a world where media coverage beyond those guys is suddenly going to put a lot of pressure. Now, I think there has been a little bit of movement in that way. I do think Berhalter was impacted by the fan response, especially around Copa America. But I don't know, Rob. I don't know the answer to your question. I don't think there isn't a way to make that happen at this point.
We'll see. We'll see. We got to move on, though. We got stuck on the first game of the Fab Four here. Real quick, NWSL pick of the day or the weekend.
NWSL, yeah, a league that now is picking up a little bit of steam. I think we've got a matchup near the top of the table. Washington is always box office. They've got Gotham FC at Audi Field tomorrow, so that's the game I would pick out from the NWSL. Obviously, the bad news is that Trinity Rodman has this back issue, and she's going to be missing for a while. But you know about Ashley Hatch, you know about some of the players that Washington brings to the table, and Gotham. They themselves pushing for a top spot in third place right now. They're behind Orlando and Washington, who are clearly the best teams in the league. But I think Gotham is always an interesting team to follow. And again, it's early enough that we're still trying to figure out who's going to be in that race to make the playoffs. So I think this could be a very good game.
All right. Have you subscribed yet? Not just yet. We're not going to move into that because we got 2 more games in the Fab Four. A brand new competition to me, at the very least. The Jägermeister Cup comes into its 2nd year of existence.
But this is the first one.
All of the USL levels.
That's right. The first one involving both USL levels, the professional levels, right? So what's the Jägermeister Cup match you want to highlight, Rob?
All right. The first Jägermeister Cup match, they've done big things. First year in USL League One, made some waves in the Open Cup. It's Naples taking on Charleston. So kind of an inter-USL matchup involving one of the hottest new teams. The USL League One teams, definitely the darlings of the Open Cup so far. We'll see if that translates into the Jägermeister Cup. Great fan support so far in the early 2 months of Naples' competitive history. We'll see if that continues versus Charleston at the weekend.
Yeah, the most interesting games here. It's very much like the Open Cup. The most interesting games are the ones that put teams from different leagues against one another. And although these are both the USL teams, it is going to be interesting to see if Naples, who has not only played good soccer but gotten some attention, they've gotten people to come out and support them in Florida, if they can beat Charleston Battery, who's the oldest standing American soccer team. They might be right there with Richmond. I can't remember who's older. One of them is slightly older than the other one. I will also pick out another one of those interleague matchups in the Jägermeister Cup. Sacramento Republic. That is, of course, my hometown team. Born in Sacramento, California, some years ago. I won't tell you exactly how many. You can see I have gray in my beard, so figure it out. They're at home against AV Alta. That is the new California team, USL League One side, who honestly hasn't been great in USL League One, but has made waves in the Open Cup as well, Rob. So it may be an upset alert in terms of a California clash.
Ring the alarm. Upset alert is definitely possible out there, and I love to see those interstate rivalries start to butt up a little bit.
I mean, California's big, so they got they can keep doing this. It can just be California versus California versus California. I mean, so many teams out there.
I think last Friday when you were out and we had Brooks Lambier on the show, I believe we highlighted that there potentially could be as many as 11 pro men's teams in California before too long, if all these planned teams come to fruition. So exciting stuff. So Columbus, San Jose, Washington Spirit versus Gotham, and then in the Jägermeister Cup, Naples, Charleston, Sacramento versus AV Alta is your Fab for American soccer games of the weekend. If you haven't hit subscribe to Morning Kick Around yet, do it now. Morning Kick Around is crashing through the 2,000 subscriber mark, just a couple away from 2,100. Working to expand this with every subscriber, more possibilities open up. While you're there, get a membership. I think it's just $3.99. You can have access to priority commenting, badges, emojis, early access to videos, and help support this program. You can follow along on social media at MKickaround. on X, Instagram, and Blue Sky. Write us a note, morningkickaround@gmail.com. And then there's another way to support Morning Kick Around. coffee.com/morningkickaround. And then if you want us as a podcast, you can do so. Search for Morning Kick Around, and you can have us as a podcast. All right, we're going to take a quick breath, a little bit of a switcheroo with the guest. So we're going to hop right on down to today's Culture Wars here on Morning Kick Around. Culture Wars here on Morning Kick Around on Friday as we kind of sit and marinate in the prospect of promotion and relegation in the United States. You think, what is going to be the details? The devil's in the details, right, Jason? We talked last week about promotion and relegation. Is that coming back to Mexico? And there are a variety of versions of promotion and relegation utilized around the globe. So which one of these would be best for the United States?
Do you think, Rob, that it needs to feel American in some way? Does it need to feel like it's got an element that we are used to? Like, for example, do you think our version of Pro Rel should involve some sort of playoff, maybe?
If it depends. I think there could be an element of the playoffs that I like, because as we work through the different versions of like different countries, such as Brazil, they kind of have an average of multiple seasons. Mexico, the bar is high if it ever comes back. The Belgian league has a wild version where they split up the brackets, half the points, and do all sorts of stuff like that. But the version that I like that seems very meritocracy based, but also includes a playoff, is a system that the Bundesliga incorporates. The bottom two teams, direct relegation. Bundesliga 2, top two teams go up, but the third to last and the third place in the second division play off in a two-legged match to get that third relegation / promotion spot. And that to me seems like the best way to marry some rural stakes. We know that the money levels and people's jobs and people's playing careers is on the line if you get relegated. And if you get to go head to head with that team that you're exchanging spots for, that's just, I feel like, golden entertainment that you could really market. And Americans very good at the market. I think you could make that, the $10 million match, so to speak,
Sure.
between there. Yeah, and it's also meritocracy based, because if the 17th or the third to last place in the top division absolutely creams that second division team, then it's, you have a better team in the top league next year.
You are okay. So this is a little bit like the championship playoff, but also the relegation playoff in Germany. You're saying take a team from the top division and give them a safety net that if they can beat a team from the lower division, they will stay up. They don't have to go down. And I mean, obviously this depends on how many teams you're involving, right? Because in your scenario, let's just use the Bundesliga example. The Bundesliga has 18 teams. So we have 16, 17, and 18 are the teams that are in the relegation zone. But only 17 and 18 are automatically relegated. 16 plays in that playoff you described. So the top two teams from the second Bundesliga come up, but the third place team plays that 16th place team from the top division. Now, the problem, if I'm going to look for a problem there, my problem is it is so tilted towards the top division team in terms of the quality of the players via their salaries. If there is a big separation. Now, if we're applying this to the potential of USL relegation, I don't know how big that gap actually will be. And that's maybe something we can look at down the road. But what you're kind of outlining, it's a big game, but I don't think it feels as big as it would if the USL Championship and USL League One, the first division, if there were promotion playoffs, again, a la the championship in England. So the top two teams go up, and then you have a set of teams 3 through 6, potentially in a league that's going to be big anyway. I mean, I know the first division might be fairly small to begin with, and we might be adding teams well before we start doing relegation. which I hope is not the case. But once you get to that point where you do have teams going up and coming down, then why not have your second division, your USL second division, have a built-in playoff? Because the prize is going up. Winning the league has less value. Like Leeds United might win the championship this year, but they don't care about that. What they care about is they've already been promoted to the Premier League next season.
That's all that
So
matters.
why not do it that way? And yeah, you don't have the safety net for the teams in the top division, and I think there will be some discussion. And as one of our members, Mike Thomas, said, the reality is probably that the owners are going to want to mitigate their risk. Although again, I don't know how big the divide between the first division of USL and the second division of USL actually will be to start. There could be a day when there's a big gap, but at least in the beginning, it might not be that big of a deal unless it's just about pride, right? You just don't want to go down to the second division rather than it be something that might hurt your bottom line in a big way. But if you are now taking away for the second division that the championship is truly what matters, that's what you're playing for, are you going to do playoffs for that championship? Or are you just going to do playoffs to see who gets to go up to the top division? Because that's the prize.
I mean, what really draws people in? They want the reward after all of it, and I feel like with the United States not having any of it, it really leaves the slate wide open, because I feel like some of us will feel placated with something rather than nothing. Like if the bar is very high for promotion, so be it. I mean, I'd rather it not be unattainable. Like when we talked about the Mexican promotion and relegation, there was a lot of factors there, and it seems like that bar was made intentionally unreachable there in Mexico. Okay,
so you mentioned Belgium. Can we throw Belgium into this pot just for a second? Because okay, so there's the two sides to this coin. So the Belgian Pro League, the top division in Belgium, and we have to talk about the Belgian Pro League before we can talk about what happens in the second division. But the Belgian Pro League does this very odd thing where they play 30 matches and then they split the league in half or in three. I think they might do it in three, right? So you have the championship playoff, the Europa League playoff, and the relegation playoff. They call them playoffs, but it's more like a mini league, right?
Yeah.
So you split the league in three, and the top teams, they're playing to win the championship. They're playing to win the title. It is not, through 30 games, whoever had the most points is the champion. It is, you now play extra games, and there is a mathematical equation involved, Rob. They half the points or something, and then so you don't lose all your points, but you don't take them all with you into the second stage of the season. And then obviously at the bottom is that relegation playoff group, and those teams are playing against one another to prevent them going down, to save themselves, which I think is interesting too, because then you create a lot of drama towards the end of the season. Hey, we got to beat our rival or whoever. We got to beat this team to stay up. And even if those are not good teams, they haven't been good all year long. That's why they're in the relegation section of the table. You have drama baked in. It doesn't matter as much that they're not good.
We shall see, but there's even more confusing versions. What do you think was more confusing, the Belgian version or the Brazilian version? Because that one is pretty hard to get the head wrapped around, but I feel like it could almost be, it's a little confusing, but the way it's set up could be paralleled in the United States, because in Brazil, they have their regional and state. It's kind of wild. I'm researching that each state has its own federation so all the different leagues, there's regional season, and then they go into a national season. And I feel like, without getting too nitty gritty, because there's, all sorts of caveats to 4 teams relegated from the third, the best evaluated state rankings get you 4 spots. Second best to 9th place get you 3 spots, and the rest of the states get 2 spots. So there's quite a bit of nuance and a lot of digging in as far as the different regions have different ways to advance. But I think that the regional, I don't know if Americans would be able to understand a regional season and then a national season. That maybe seems like a stretch, but I think that it could be a something to take some cues from Brazil to try to marry the regional need for the new teams that are starting now, and then somehow connect to them to the national.
I think you might be wrong about the Americans understanding this, Because again, is this not pretty much what college sports are? Big time college sports. You play in your conference and you
Traditionally,
have
yeah.
a record. Well, yeah, things maybe are a little different now, but you play in your conference. You have a record in your conference. You may play other teams outside your conference in your schedule. I don't know. You have to figure out that part out. But then you go, maybe you have a conference tournament. I don't know if you have time for that in soccer, but then you go to the national tournament. You go on to something else. I mean, I don't know that there's any league in America that wants to move in that direction, because then you do limit the possibility of matchups between teams from different parts of the country, because if you do it geographically. And there have been lots of people who have kind of imagined a world in which either you do geographical regions. What do we had that crazy pro rel idea that was thrown out in the late 80s by US Soccer that had all these multiple regions and things. That idea is intriguing to me, but again, you then sort of lock down and you don't have a national thing that you can sell. It's media rights now. So much of this is driven by TV deals and everything. You don't really want to limit yourself that way, which is probably why it won't happen. You could also do something a la Major League Baseball, where your divisions, your conferences are not geographically based. They're kind of just a random collection team from all over the country, and you divide them in half, and you say, oh, this is the blue conference and this is the red conference or whatever. I mean, that's something. I don't think so. I think, and look, again, Mike, keep it simple, stupid, right? That is probably a good thing in terms of what we're talking about for American soccer. Again, my vote would be to do a very English style approach where the teams at the bottom of the table, you're getting relegated. Then you have promotion playoffs coming up from that second division, build that excitement. Now, if you want to have playoffs to determine your champion in the top division, if you're lacking some drama, if you want to do playoffs within the top division to determine who goes down, I could see that also being a thing. So take that same promotion playoff, but make it a relegation playoff, but make it within the top division. So your bottom in a 20-team league, your bottom 6 teams are playing off.
So right now we would have or historically at least, DC United versus Chicago Fire for to stay in Major League Soccer is kind of essentially what that would translate to.
Sure, something like that. You would take those teams and you would say, all right, you guys are playing a 3-game playoff. Like the top 2 teams get a bye, and then the bottom 4 teams play the first round, and then you go in and you play at the home of the slightly higher seeded teams, and then obviously losers go. Losers are out. The other teams save themselves.
So ultimately, who are we trying to sell on this? The general American public, the hardcore nerds of soccer. This is trying to broaden the appeal, right? Simplicity would be the take, right? So I keep on falling back on the Bundesliga having the 2 straight spots, or at least maybe in American soccer, maybe we reduce that to 1 automatic spot, and then the inter division playoff. It seems the most straightforward, has some playoff a lot riding on the line, high stakes game that you can promote. And it all makes sense, because if that team that's a second or third place team in the lower division really isn't that good, then they don't get to inhabit the first division. I think that marries both the entertainment value and the merit aspect of it. And our own Josh Sargent, American, our favorite redhead number 9. He went through that when he was in Germany and survived. And didn't Werner Bremen survive in a very tight relegation battle there? So say in the chat, if you're watching this after the live show, what is the promotion and relegation version? Did we miss a variant of this? Throw that in the chat. And what do you think would be the best for the United States? An average of a couple seasons, 2 seasons, a promotion relegation spot, just straight up swaps? And how many spots? Should 1, 2, 3 teams exchange divisions each year? You think conservative start, but I'd like to hear what the MK Ultras have to say about the preferred version of promotion and relegation in the United States. If you are watching this show, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Have you subscribed yet? If not, hit that subscribe button. We are working to expand the MK Ultras as much as possible. The YouTube opens a lot more possibilities of what we're able to do with the more subscribers. I know I'm guilty of watching some channels and not hitting the button, but now I hit the button on almost anything I return to watch for a second time. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
And now that we hit a certain level, we can now, we have launched memberships. So $3.99, you get priority commenting, badges, icons, emojis, early access to videos when we post them, and you can have that warmth in your heart that you are helping this program become sustainable and grow towards the future. Follow along on social media at MKickaround on X, Instagram, and Blue Sky. Write us a note, morningkickaround@gmail.com. You can also support us at coffee.com/morningkickaround. We've got some content over there and a number of very generous donations there. You can go as little as $5 or as much as you want, single time or regular occurrences. And if you can't watch us on the screen on YouTube, you can look us up on your favorite audio platform for the podcast version of Morning Kick Around. We're going to pull a little bit of a pivot here, and we're going to come back. What's the next segment for segment 3?
I think we're going to do American Soccer is Weird. You ready for that?
All right, American Soccer is Weird to round out Friday here on Morning Kick Around. American Soccer is Weird, our favorite segment here on Morning Kick Around. It seems to keep coming up. Weird things happen in American soccer. So round out the week. First shout out, brand new member, Penzone iSports. Thank you so much for becoming our latest member. Joining the MK Ultras.
What did you say? Penzone iSports? Is that how you say that?
Now that you pointed it out, it's clearly not right. You know, I'm in the Macintosh world. Apparently, everything's an I something or other. But Penzone Sports, thank you so much for being our new member. But back to the topic at hand. American soccer is weird, and some folks have probably wanted to. Hey, Tulsa Mario, what up? Some folks have maybe considered suing their team for lack of results or effort, but someone has actually done so. Courtesy Stephen Bank put this up a couple days ago, saying that someone has filed a complaint against United States Soccer, claiming that the United States women's national team didn't try to win the SheBelieves Cup, and he is filing a complaint for monetary restoration or remuneration, however you want to say it, because the U.S. women's national team, in this fan's perception, didn't try to win the competition.
This is absolutely wild to me. Now, this is not the first time a fan has sued over performance, right? With a sport. I'm sure this has happened before. I don't remember specifically, but I'm positive in this very litigious society in which we live, Rob, that some American sports fan has been like, that team, they didn't care enough, and I, as a consumer, I'm being defrauded, and I'm suing them for damages. I also can't imagine anyone's ever won one of these. So I don't get the motivation here. A complaint was filed against U.S. Soccer for defrauding the U.S. government. Defrauding the government.
So this is saying to win. The Soccer Federation is stealing money from the government because they don't try hard enough?
Yeah, I don't know. Stephen goes on, the complainant seeks an injunction against U.S. Soccer appearing on TV. They don't want U.S. Soccer on TV anymore.
Hold it.
And excluded from wagering, and requests almost $100 million in damages for wrongful and intentional and repeated violation of the False Claims Act.
This is harsh. I gotta say, regardless of the the legal ramifications, but that's harsh to say that the women didn't even try. I mean, obviously the result didn't go their way, but to say that they're like defrauding people based on that performance is pretty harsh.
Is this I would imagine this is based on player selection, right? This has to be based on the idea that Emma Hayes didn't didn't use the absolute best player she could have, or and obviously that's in the eye of the beholder, right? That's a subjective thing. But perhaps Michael Bucksbaum, and by the way, that's his name. It says it right there, the plaintiff. And I have tried to find out which Michael Bucksbaum is behind this, and there are several out there, and I can't seem to figure out who it might be. And I don't want to randomly message Michael Bucksbaums and be like, "Did you file a lawsuit against U.S. Soccer for $100 million in damages?" But I do want to talk to this person. I want to know what's going on here. Okay, let's look at this relief again. And Steven's got the basics there, but soccer games to be suspended from broadcast distribution platforms pending the litigation of this complaint and request for injunction. They want the U.S. Soccer Federation to be excluded from wagering pending the litigation of this complaint and the request. This sounds like somebody who lost a bet. Somebody's salty that they lost a bet. They put money on the U.S. to beat Japan. They didn't beat Japan. They lost their money, and now they're suing over it. He also wants $5.5 million for the False Claims Act. Also, $93,931,548 for wrongful and intentional and repeated violations of the False Claims Act. They want U.S. Soccer to, he wants U.S. Soccer to disclose full and complete financial information to him for revenue, salaries, expenses, health insurance, and post-employment lifestyle benefits. Also asks that U.S. Soccer refrain from accepting foreign money for playing the game of world football. Is that like a legal term? World football, capitalized that way? It doesn't say soccer. It says world football. Why? Why does it say world football, Rob?
Maybe that sounds like a lawyer getting involved. It's like, we don't want to get it confused here when they're breaking it down and they say football. It's like, this has nothing to do with the NFL. Throw it out of court. I'm not sure if that's a legal term at all, but I do find some comments funny. It seems to be a common thread about their team when they're underperforming. Luke Zagorski in the chat, calling his attorney, Manchester United have a lot to answer for, and similar sentiment. Mike, can I sue Jay Sugarman? Of course, in the top chair at Philadelphia Union. If I'd say, it's hard to say. Lawsuits are funny. It's taken seriously and what is a frivolous thing. Like, this could be an absolute nothing burger that's like Judge Reed and goes, get out of town. You know,
it is.
But
it is.
So say there's a limited possibility that this is true. But if this does go ahead and there's even a court hearing, that could change the way that sports are perceived and how coaches, pick their team. If like there's some sort of precedent for being sued and being held accountable for team selection.
I mean, we don't want this can of worms opened. We don't.
Hey, we're into the era of opening a Pandora's box on things that we don't want to let out.
I know.
So why not this?
And look, obviously soccer, and I'm not claiming anything about the U.S. women's national team or U.S. soccer, but obviously soccer as a whole has had a match fixing problem. It has happened in a lot of places. It happened in Canada. Go read up on the Canadian match fixing story, because that was a wild thing that happened. If you are betting, well, first of all, we don't have to talk about the morality of gambling, do we? Does that have to come into this conversation?
No, I mean, I feel like everyone knows the evils of it.
Apparently, Michael Bucksbaum was not willing to accept the repercussions of placing money on a game, if that's indeed what's happening here. And again, relief number 1, suspended from broadcast. Relief number 2, excluded from wagering pending litigation of this complaint. I mean, if you have a legitimate concern that match fixing happened and there's an investigation, I suppose that you could then be in a position where you should get damages for that. But if we're just suing teams because they don't live up to our expectations, man, we will be swimming in lawsuits. And I guess, it's at one point, does a judge have to decide, well, it's your fault for rooting for the Cleveland Browns, not the team's fault for being bad. That's who they are. What are you talking about? You made this bargain. I'm tossing this lawsuit out.
All right. So bringing it to this summer, Angel Alarcon.
What's up on it?
So he brings up the Gold Cup. I mean, that's a good example. So Gold Cup doesn't always bring the A team. This year, it's a little bit different with the World Cup looming and the current situation with the team.
Yeah.
If there's any progress with this legal complaint, maybe that affects the Gold Cup.
Okay. I would also say that you are not a fan if you sue your team. You're not a fan. Okay, you're not a supporter. You are in it for the wrong reasons. Now, I'm not saying you give your team a pass. I'm not saying that you don't get upset when they're bad or they make mistakes or when the leadership is poor or they feel incompetent or they sign the wrong player or they draft the wrong player. Last night was kind of wild watching all that stuff happen in Green Bay and people responding to draft picks. Are the Jets fans happy this year? I can't remember. I don't. Is that? It's always tough to tell.
Without specific knowledge, I would shade towards no, because that's typically their situation. Their demeanor
Yeah.
is typically
Yeah.
not happy.
Yeah. If you are a normal sports fan, you get mad when your team stinks. You stop buying tickets, you stop buying gear until they get better, then you jump right back in because we are addicts with our teams. Right? What is the line from Godfather 3? I thought I was out, but then they pulled me back in. That's sports. That's what fandom is about. Suing your team indicates it's not actually your team, because now you think of them as an adversary, as an enemy, rather than as part of who you are.
Angus in the chat, member, thank you, Angus. Maybe this can be brought to injury law and treat this case like a mental illness. And that's just funny there. And then Mike with another one. I'm an abusive relationship with my teams.
Yeah, aren't we all?
People sue people they've had relationships with. So blurring that line.
I will also say, I judge you. I judge you harshly if all of your teams are good and you're just loving everything with your sports fandom. If you are one of those people, because to me that indicates that you have chosen to jump on bandwagons and glory hunt, and you're not actually, because maybe we have one team that's good. I got I got a football team that's good, or I got a baseball team that's good. But there's always got to be a bad team in your portfolio. Unless you're soccer only, in which case, okay, maybe the soccer only people are like, well, my Premier League team is good, but my Italian team stinks, or my Spanish club is going through a terrible time, or my Mexican team, or my MLS team, or whatever. Because we also do that, right? Because soccer lets us do that in ways other sports don't.
Yeah, across all the sports, I've definitely have my mix of absolutely miserable teams. I mean, I'm from the Detroit area, so like I've rooted for the Lions my whole life, so I definitely know what the bottom of the barrel is. But I'm also a Liverpool supporter, so I know what winning's like. And hey, are you gonna do a guard of honor on Monday if things go well for me on Sunday? Are you gonna do something?
We will find a way to fetch you on Monday if it happens, which it will. It's gonna happen. You'll be champions on Monday.
But for those who haven't had the team win, it's winning it all. It almost just seems like the way everything should play out. Like, oh yeah, this is just, winning is the correct way for this passage of play to happen out. And then so losing seems so much worse than the winning seems good, if that makes any sense. Like, yeah, of course, that's my team. They should win. It's great. They went the way it should be, but losing is so heartbreaking and devastating. It builds exactly what this is. Losing builds character. All right, not to sound too dad on this show. Losing builds character. I don't think that your experience as a sports fan can be as rich as possible unless you go through painful times before the glory comes. If you're a 15-year-old from Boston, what do you know about anything, kid?
Exactly. And I, as a Red Sox fan, I definitely think that that's interesting, that there are generations of Red Sox fans who went through so many years of pain to have that cathartic moment in 2004. And I was going bonkers like every other Red Sox fan. And now there are Boston people, because of the Patriots and the Red Sox and the Celtics. Have the Bruins won one since 2000? I don't know. It's annoying now. It's annoying that
Boston. I mean, until very recently, this is the first year that Boston and Detroit didn't make the playoffs since like 1967 or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's the run of good times. You need a little pain every now and then. You need to suffer in order to have, because it's in relief, right? Winning is in relief of losing. You can't have one without the other, and you can't enjoy the winning and have that full expression of of just absolute joy that comes with a championship or a trophy, unless you've had those difficult times.
And that should do it for our Friday episode of Morning Kick Around. Thank you, everyone, for joining. A good chat today. If you haven't hit subscribe already, do so now. Morning Kick Around on YouTube.com. The more subscriptions and memberships, the bigger this show can get, the richer the conversation, and adds to sustainability. And you've contributed to trying to make this the one of the center points of the American soccer conversation. As the popularity grows, I don't know if the media is necessarily following along, so we're trying to fill that void.
Well, we're going to talk. We got some things in the can coming up next week. Should be really good. But we've been talking about the media situation, and I am lucky enough to be in a position to talk about soccer media in America, having worked in it and still working in it, and maybe having one of the few full-time jobs in American soccer. And I don't want, first of all, I don't want to take that for granted. And because I don't want to take it for granted, I want to talk about where we are. And I don't know that that we're going to change anything immediately, but maybe we can open up that conversation about where we are with a World Cup coming to America in like a year.
Follow us along on social media at MKickaround on X, Instagram, and Blue Sky platforms. You can also write us a note, morningkickaround@gmail.com. We love to hear from marketers, but we love to hear from the MK Ultras even more. So write us a note over there.
Yeah, you need to help break up those "your SEO is terrible" emails that we get. Send us an email.
Yeah, definitely. I love to get those. And then you can also take us in your pocket, or you can support us on coffee.com/morningkickaround. There is exclusive content there, and we've been receiving some very welcome and generous donations. You can do a one-time, regularly scheduled, small as $5 and as large as you can get. Shout out to those supporting over there. And you can take us in your pocket as a podcast. Search Morning Kick Around on your favorite podcast platform. All right. Any last words? I feel like our Friday has been thoroughly kicked. And I think my homework for the weekend is to properly communicate time zones to guests. So my apologies to Duncan Riddle. We will get you onto the show next week. Apologies. Yeah. I don't know how time zones work, apparently, but
I will also say, new members, make sure you check the posts. I'll maybe repost it again. We got a Discord for the MK Ultras. Jump into the Discord, be part of that conversation.
All right. Until Monday, when we return, everybody, enjoy your soccer.